Hello, my dear children. Myself Sujata. Today we'll learn a new chapter from history. Chapter 3, Nazism and the Rise of Hitler. All of us have probably heard about Hitler or the word Nazi at least once in our lifetime. Who was Hitler and what did he do? Who is a Nazi? How did Nazism come into existence? So let us learn how the First World War impacted a powerful empire like Germany and the events that followed with rise of Hitler, the Nazi ideology and the crimes against humanity. Let us also understand why Hellman's father, mentioned in the story, killed himself and the basis of his fear. Okay, first let us see the topics to be covered today. We'll be discussing on birth of the Weimar Republic, the years of depression, Hitler's rise to power, the destruction of democracy, the Nazi worldview, the youth in Germany, and the Holocaust. Okay, first let us have an overview of the topic. What do you mean by Nazism? Nazism was a system, a structure of ideas about the world and politics. At the end of the war, an international military tribunal at Nuremberg was set up to prosecute Nazi war criminals for crimes against peace, for war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Okay, who are called as the Allied powers? The Allied powers were initially led by the United Kingdom and France. In 1941, they were joined by the USSR and USA. They fought against the Axis powers, namely Germany, Italy, and Japan. Under the shadow of the Second World War, Germany had waged a genocidal war which resulted in the mass murder of selected groups of innocent civilians of Europe. So, genocidal means killing on large scale, leading to destruction of large sections of people. The number of people killed included 6 million Jews, 200,000 gypsies, 1 million Polish civilians, 70,000 Germans who were considered mentally and physically disabled, besides innumerable political opponents. Nazis devised an unprecedented means of killing people, that is, by gassing them in various killing centers like Auschwitz. Auschwitz is a concentration camp in Poland. The retribution did come, yet the punishment of the Nazis was far short of the brutality and extent of their crimes. Retribution means it's a kind of punishment as vengeance for a wrong or criminal act. Okay, now let us talk about birth of Weimar Republic. Germany, a powerful empire in the early years of the 20th century, fought the First World War, that is from 1914 to 1918, alongside the Austrian Empire and against the Allies, which include England, France, and Russia. So Germany, a powerful empire in the early years of 20th century, fought the First World War alongside the Austrian Empire and against the Allies. The war stretched on, eventually draining Europe of all its resources. Germany made initial gains by occupying France and Belgium. However, the Allies, strengthened by the US entry in 1917, won defeating Germany and the Central Powers in November 1918. This resulted in change in German polity. The defeat of Imperial Germany and the abdication of the emperor gave an opportunity to parliamentary parties to recast German polity. A national assembly met at Weimar and established a democratic constitution with a federal structure. Deputies were now elected to the German parliament or Reichstag on the basis of equal and universal votes cast by all adults, including women. Okay, this resulted in the fall of the Weimar Republic. This republic, however, was not received well by its own people largely because of the terms it was forced to accept after Germany's defeat at the end of the First World War. The peace treaty at Versailles with the Allies was a harsh and humiliating peace. Germany lost its overseas colonies, a tenth of its population, 13% of its territories, 75% of its iron, and 26% of its coal to France, Poland, Denmark, and Lithuania. The Allied powers demilitarized Germany to weaken its power. The war guilt clause held Germany responsible for the war and damages the Allied countries suffered. Germany was forced to pay compensation amounting to 6 billion. The Allied armies also occupied the resource rich Rhineland for much of the 1920s. Many Germans held the new Weimar Republic responsible for not only the defeat in the war but the disgrace at Versailles. Okay, now let us see what are the effects of the war. The war had a devastating impact on the entire continent, both psychologically and financially. From a continent of creditors, Europe turned into one of debtors. Unfortunately, the infant Weimar Republic was being made to pay for the sins of the old empire. The Republic carried the burden of war guilt and national humiliation and was financially crippled by being forced to pay compensation. Those who supported the Weimar Republic, mainly socialists, Catholics, and Democrats, became easy targets of attack in the conservative nationalist circles. They were mockingly called the November criminals. Okay, now let us know about the European society post World War I. Soldiers came to be placed above civilians. Politicians and publicists laid great stress on the need for men to be aggressive, strong, and masculine. The media glorified trench life. The truth, however, was that soldiers lived miserable lives in these trenches, trapped with rats, feeding on corpses. They faced poisonous gas and enemy shelling and witnessed their ranks reduce rapidly. Aggressive war propaganda and national honor occupied center stage in the public sphere, while popular support grew for conservative dictatorships that had recently come into being. Democracy was indeed a young and fragile idea which could not survive the instabilities of interwar Europe. Okay, now let us try to know about the political radicalism and economic crisis. The birth of the Weimar Republic coincided with the revolutionary uprising of the Spartacist League or Marxist revolutionary movement on the pattern of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. So the Spartacus League, it was a revolutionary socialist group which was formed in Germany during the First World War. Soviets of workers and sailors were established in many cities. The political atmosphere in Berlin was charged with demands for Soviet style governance. Those opposed to this, such as the Socialists, Democrats, and Catholics, met in Weimar to give shape to the Democratic Republic. The Weimar Republic crushed the uprising with the help of a war veterans organization called Free Corps. The anguished Spartacus later founded the Communist Party of Germany. Communists and socialists henceforth became irreconcilable enemies and could not make common cause against Hitler. Both revolutionaries and militant nationalists craved for radical solutions. And regarding economic crisis, Germany had fought the war largely on loans and had to pay war reparations in gold. This depleted gold reserves at a time resources were scarce. In 1923, Germany refused to pay and the French occupied its leading industrial area, Ruhr, to claim their coal. Germany retaliated with passive resistance and printed paper currency recklessly. With too much printed money in circulation, the value of the German mark fell. In April, the US dollar was equal to 24,000 marks. In July, 353,000 marks. In August, 46,21,000 marks. And at 98,860,000 marks by December. The figure had run into trillions. As the value of the mark collapsed, prices of goods soared. The image of Germans carrying cartloads of currency notes to buy a loaf of bread was widely publicized, evoking worldwide sympathy. This crisis came to be known as hyperinflation, a situation when prices rise phenomenally high. Eventually, the Americans intervened and bailed Germany out of the crisis by introducing the Davis Plan, which reworked the terms of reparation to ease the financial burden on Germans. Next comes the years of depression. The years between 1924 and 1928 saw some stability. German investments and industrial recovery were totally dependent on short term loans, largely from the USA. This support was withdrawn when the Wall Street Exchange crashed in 1929. Fearing a fall in prices, people made frantic efforts to sell their shares. Wall Street Exchange means the name of the world's biggest stock exchange located in the USA. On one single day, 24 October, 13 million shares were sold. This was the start of the Great Economic Depression. Over the next 3 years, between 1929 and 1932, the national income of the USA fell by half. Factories shut down, exports fell, farmers were badly hit, and speculators withdrew their money from the market. The effects of this recession in the US economy were felt worldwide. Okay, now let us talk about the economic crisis in Germany. After the Wall Street crashed in 1929, the German economy was the worst hit by the economic crisis. By 1932, industrial production was reduced to 40% of the 1929 level. Workers lost their jobs or were paid reduced wages. The number of unemployed touched an unprecedented 6 million. On the streets of Germany, you could see men with placards around their necks saying, willing to do any work. Unemployed youths played cards or simply sat at street corners or desperately queued up at the local employment exchange. As jobs disappeared, the youth took to criminal activities and total despair became commonplace. The economic crisis created deep anxieties and fears in people. The middle classes, especially salaried employees and pensioners, saw their savings diminish when the currency lost its value. Small businessmen, the self employed, and retailers suffered as their businesses got ruined. These sections of society were filled with the fear of proletarianization and anxiety of being reduced to the ranks of the working class, or worse still, the unemployed. Only organized workers could manage to keep their heads above water. But unemployment weakened their bargaining power. Big business was in crisis. Large mass of peasantry was affected by a sharp fall in agricultural prices, and women, unable to fill their children's stomachs, were filled with a sense of deep despair. Okay, now let us discuss about the political crisis. Politically, too, the Weimar Republic was fragile. The Weimar Constitution had some inherent defects which made it unstable and vulnerable to dictatorship. One was proportional representation. This made achieving a majority by any one party a near impossible task, leading to a rule by coalitions. Another defect was Article 48, which gave the President the powers to impose emergency, suspend civil rights, and rule by decree. Within its short life, the Weimar Republic saw 20 different cabinets lasting on an average 239 days, and a liberal use of Article 48. Yet, the crisis could not be managed. People lost confidence in the democratic parliamentary system, which seemed to offer no solutions. Okay, let us recap what we have learned in this session. We had an overview of the chapter. We discussed about the birth of the Weimar Republic. That is, after initial gains, Germany and the Central Powers were defeated in World War I. Allies got strengthened with US entry in the war in 1917. Abdication of German Emperor and setting up of National Assembly and elections based on universal adult franchise. Formation of Republic in Germany could not influence Germans. They blamed for German humiliation by accepting German defeat and signing of the Treaty of Versailles. Then we talked about the political radicalism and economic crisis. There is a country changed with the demand for Soviet style governance. Socialists, Democrats, and Catholics trusted for a democratic republic. Formation of Communist Party of Germany by Spartacists. Radical solutions were sought to achieve political gains. Germany fought war on loans and was made to pay in gold. Reckless printing of paper currency declined the value of German mark. Hyperinflation further created chaos in Germany. USA introduced the Davis Plan to bail out Germany from crisis. Then followed the years of depression. Wall Street exchange in USA crashed. Beginning of Great Economic Depression. Germany faced its worst economic crisis, loss of jobs or reduced wages, unemployment reached unprecedented levels, currency lost values, savings diminished, fear of impoverishment engulfed the whole Germany. Okay, now try to read the textbook thoroughly and answer the questions that is given at the end of the textbook. Meet you in the next session. Thank you.